Well, hello everybody. It is summertime, and I thought this year, for the last 3 years, I've made post Porcfest videos. I thought it'd be cool to do a pre Porcfest video just to kind of give a some information on how to go, what to expect, what you need to do, what you don't need to do. A couple of people have asked me for advice on what to do, and it's a pretty cool event. For those of you who have never gone, I definitely consider going at least once. Among libertarian events in the world, I think it must be one of the, maybe even the most worth going to. I obviously qualify that by saying I haven't gone to every event that you could go to. I'm sure Mises U is great. I'm sure the Property and Freedom uh, event that Hans Hermann Hoppe puts on is pretty cool. But having gone to the Students for Liberty, Liberty Forum, um, those events, as much as I like them and they're interesting, I think Porcfest is just a whole other level. It's quite an interesting mix of both intellectually stimulating things. They always bring in good speakers. They vary, like they're not always the best. I mean, I can think of some years having better speakers than others, but even on the bad years, there's people worth listening to. You get to meet a whole bunch of people. The side discussions are always interesting. It's a lot of fun. There's, I mean, the side discussions are usually more interesting than the presentations, although not always. It's an environment that most people are going to find unique. You're going to have open carry. You're going to have people having a good time. There's lots of families there, which a lot of people don't realize. Lots of kids. You've got more straight-laced like Republicans there. I mentioned last year Solonusis, who is a very straight-laced, very powerful, well, potentially anyway, within the GOP, just showed up with his family, um, quite inexplicably. So it's a very interesting event. It's in a beautiful setting and right there in the White Mountains. And I mean, just if you don't even want to do Porcfest the whole time, you can go. Mount Washington's not far away. It's less than an hour drive. I'd say it's maybe like 40-minute drive to get there. So just an all around a great event. But so here's the things you kind of need to know. There's the Porcfest, the official event, which is put on by the Free State Project, and then there's Rogers Campground, the area where the event is hosted. And you don't technically you're supposed to register with the Free State Project to go. You can do that online. If you go on like porcfest2015.com, you can probably find it. If you do it early enough, you get a lower rate, although you can do it when you walk up. And even the walk up wait for the whole week is like I think maybe $50, which isn't very much. The other thing with that is there's very little enforcement of that part of it. So even if you don't register and you just show up, there's going to be very little to stop you. I mean, technically, the Free State Project wants only people who pay to go to certain events. The main events, like they have a main speaker, and I haven't even looked to see who's going this year. Um, they want only people who have paid to go to that, and they have like a security detachment, the Church of the Sword, so called, that will try and enforce that. But it's very, very minimal. Even though I pay every year, I never take. They give you a wristband or something to wear. I'll never wear that, and it never. So as far as anyone could tell, I am unpaid, and they never stop. I mean, one guy did stop me once, and I said, "I just don't wear my bracelet." And he's like, oh, "All right, well, you're supposed to." And I'm like, "Well, I didn't want to." So, and this is like a one event in the world where like they can't possibly like really argue with you there about not wanting to do something like that, even though they could say there's a contractual region. But those are only for a couple events, and that's easily circumventable. Um, Most of the events you're not going to see that. To just be in the campground, you're not going to see that. So you can attend the event, and even if you for some reason couldn't make it to these things because of that, you wouldn't be missing very much. The other thing though is Rogers Campground has its own rules. Like joining Porcfest does not mean you can technically stay at Rogers Campground for free. You either need to pay for like a site or you need to pay to park. And paying to park, I think, is the one thing that's going to be very hard not to get away with. If you don't pay them for their sticker, they could tow you. And there aren't really any convenient places to park nearby. The closest places are something like half a mile away, and those places are private too, and they're not going to like you to just park there the whole time. So every year that I've gone, I have always paid for the parking, and I think it's something like $10 a day or $15 a day. It's not very much. So you go and you get for a full week, you put a sticker on your car, you don't have to worry about it anymore. So then the question becomes, where should I stay? So I've pretty much done everything that you can do. The first year I went out there, I didn't realize I was going to get to go. I thought about going for a few years, because I was working and because of the nature of my schedule back then, there was no way I was going to know in advance that it was going to work out. But as it happened, about a week before Porcfest happened, I finished a well, and my boss called me and said it's a while. They're having problems, and it's going to be like a month. And I said, great. And I just went out there. I didn't register. I didn't do anything. I just drove out there in my car, and I didn't have a tent, I didn't have anything reserved, and I paid for the parking pass, and I parked. They have a small parking lot that you can't really park at long term. The small parking lot is just there to register or something like that. They have grassy areas. They have other areas in the campground where you can park long term. I just would park there, and I actually like slept in my car, in my truck, and that sucked. That was very, very uncomfortable. I've slept in my car before. I've traveled cross country where either I couldn't get into a hotel, or I was just trying to save money, or for a while I kind of thought it would be fun to try, and I've discovered that, like, unless I do some major remodeling, a pickup truck is not a very comfortable place to sleep, uh, either in the back or in the front. But that's what I did. The first year I went to Porcfest, that's what I did. I slept in a truck, and I've met other people who have done that. I met a subscriber the year after that who he came up, he showed up, and he had actually retrofitted his truck to have like bunk beds in the back and whatever. So like you can do that. You can sleep in a vehicle. If you have paid to park there, they're not going to say anything. You won't have any problems. Okay, so the next year I decided I don't want to do that again. I want to have a spot and sleep in a tent, because a tent is more comfortable than a car. So I actually teamed up with one of my subscribers. I asked him if he wanted to go. We decided we both lived in the Midwest, so we carpooled. I got a location, I think in February or March, and just so you know, like if you're watching this video, I'm recording this in June 12th, 2015. It's way too late to get a spot at the campground. When I looked, this was I think in February. All the tent spots were taken, all the camping trailer spots were taken, and all the RV spots were taken except for like two. And so even though I didn't have an RV and all I was going to use was a tent, I had to get an RV spot, because that was all that was left. Now that's for the entire week. And the other thing to know about Porcfest is it starts on Monday and it goes until Sunday. And actually, I believe there's even people still there on Monday, although I have never stayed that long. Um, Most of the main events are Friday, Saturday. So around Thursday, Friday, Saturday are the busiest days. And if you have to only go a certain time, you can come earlier in the week. There's still stuff to do. You're not like, that's not a pregame or anything. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, there's still plenty of stuff to see and do. It's just not the main stuff, and it's not as crowded. So it might be possible now for you to get a spot on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday that isn't reserved. Maybe. I doubt it though. I was looking for spots for the entire week. They were all filled up by, say, February, except for like one or two. And because it was an RV spot, I ended up having to pay, I think, quintuple what it would have cost. But it still wasn't that bad. And by splitting it up with with the person I came with, it wasn't that bad at all. Um, so one thing though that I noticed both years that I was there is so many people. Everyone there is a capitalist. Everyone there is open for exchanges. Lots of people are generous, and you see lots of campsites that have 4 or 5 tents set up on them. And so the next year I thought, I really don't need to reserve a spot. I really can probably find a spot from somebody there. So last year when I went, I didn't reserve anything. I just showed up. I brought a tent, and just I didn't force myself on anybody. I didn't go and be like, "Hey, I really need a spot." I just started conversations with people, and I ended up meeting this really cool guy. I forget how we first started talking. He didn't know who I was from before, so it wasn't like a subscriber who recognized me or anything like that. Just somebody that I started chatting with. We had a lot of good discussions, and at some point I was like, he was on a site. He had one tent. There was plenty of space. and I said, hey, I'm looking for a place, and I'd like to, would you be willing to let me pitch my tent here? And of course, I offered to pay. I said I can, I can we can cut this out. I can pay you half, and he said it's fine, just stay. So last year I stayed for free. Now I still paid for my car to be there, and I still paid the registration, but that was it. I didn't pay anything for a campsite. But then also, uh, at one point during that week, it rained quite a bit, and I was just getting a little bit tired of the whole camping thing. And so I went and got a hotel room for one night last year. And I really liked it a lot, to be honest. I mean, I've done a lot of camping. I'm okay with camping. I like doing outdoor stuff, but it gets old after a while, and you're not always in the mood for that. And one thing about Rogers Campground is that it's too small for this event. Porcfest gets bigger and bigger every year, essentially. They don't do a direct count, but that's the sense that everyone has. When they first started having them, they weren't having them at this place. They were having them in other parts of the state, and they were much smaller events. And then they latched onto Rogers, I want to say like probably 7 or 8 or more years ago, maybe 10 years at this point, I'm not sure. And Rogers Campground it's a beautiful location. It's a very nice area, and for what Porcfest is, it's pretty good for that. However, as Porcfest has grown, it's outgrown this campground in a lot of ways, and that's kind of charming. But that causes logistical problems, especially when we're talking about sanitation. The bathroom facilities at Rogers don't really keep up with the people there, so we have problems where you can go to take a shower and there might not be any hot water. There might not be any water, period. There might not be, the plumbing might not be working at all. That's happened once or twice. It didn't happen last year, but it happened the year before that. Not to mention the fact that you could very often end up waiting a long time just to take a shower. Now, it's not like a formal diner dinner thing where you need to be super clean all the time. No one's going to chide you, but most people like to be clean. I know I certainly do. And I'm kind of past that stage where I think it's fun to be dirty all the time. Not that you get really dirty there, but it's the summer, it's sweaty. There's not going to be air conditioning everywhere you go. In fact, there's not going to be much air conditioning most places you go. So, uh, yeah, so this year I kind of made the decision that I like to go. With the idea being that if I ended up not going, I could probably find a way to work around this. So in March, early March, I went online and started looking for hotels, and I could not find, by that point, on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, all the hotels in Lancaster, the nearest town. There's a town right there. It's on the outskirts of Lancaster. And Lancaster is a touristy area, so it has like, I want to say almost like a dozen hotels in it. And they range from very, very kind of cheap to they have some upscale, like the kind of places where like Bilderberg would meet. I'm not kidding. Like there are hotels that are like that there too. Um, and like that anyway. And you can't get rooms for the whole week anymore. When I looked in March, I could get rooms in Lancaster for until Thursday or Friday, I want to say, and then that was it. Everything had already been booked. So if you want to come on Friday, Saturday, and you want to get a hotel, you're going to have to get a hotel in some farther away town. Now I found another place to stay about 10 miles away, 10, 15 miles away, and I thought that's not too bad. I can do that kind of commute. So for the later part of the week, I got those, but those were filling up too. I noticed that all those had like one room, two rooms, and I don't know if that's because of Porcfest or just because it's in the summer and this place is busy. Um, but I will say too, though, if you're talking about earlier in the week, there's a chance you could still find a room. Now I haven't looked since March, but based on my experience last year, I think it was on maybe Tuesday night, I was like, I'm just going to go get a hotel room, and I didn't have any trouble finding one. In fact, there were more than one available. Is that true this year? Is that true still now? I don't know. You'd have to go look. But if you do, you're looking for a hotel in the Lancaster area. And the closer you can get to Lancaster, the better. Um, the other thing is, I wasn't sure if I was going to go this year. I didn't know my work schedule. As the year progressed, it became increasingly likely that I would be able to go. But part of my mind had thought, well, if I go and if it turns out I can't go, well, I mean, one of the reasons I didn't get hotel rooms earlier was to say, well, I don't want to buy reserve hotel rooms, pay for them, and then find out I'm not going to go. However, it wouldn't have been so bad because there's a good chance I would have been able to find somebody to say, I've got a reservation, do you want to buy it? And that's another thing is people are sub-renting hotel rooms. People are going, hey, I've got a room. How would you like to come and spend the night? There's plumbing, there's air conditioning, there's TV, whatever. Not that you should be watching TV, but it's just nice to have a bed, have air conditioning, and have working sanitation. That can be nice. So um, that's going on. I thought I might need to do that. If I didn't go, since I am going, I'm going to use the rooms. I still might be open to like actually renting them out to people. We'll see how it plays out. Like I haven't made any plans so far, but throwing it out there, including throwing it out here on this. If there's anyone who thinks they might want to go and think they might be interested, let me know. Maybe we can work something out. But even if you and I can't, there's lots of other people there. Like bring a sleeping bag, bring a pad, bring a hammock, bring a tent, and you're going to be able to find something that works. So what's the other things? Okay, so food. Like there are grocery stores nearby. You can do shopping there. You can bring whatever you want. Like there's power outlets there, so yeah, like you can have a hot pad. They have ovens or they have fire pits. So like if you want to do your own cooking and you can do camp cooking, then that's fine. If you want access to like a full kitchen, that might be difficult. I think most of the locations aren't going to have that. Just like your typical campground, most of the lots are not set up for that. And if you haven't reserved one, the chances that you can find one, maybe you can, but I don't know. Um, you, in my experience, you don't need to cook for yourself. First 2 years I came, I kind of had that idea, and I never did because there was so much food available there that it made very little sense to start wasting my time trying to cook something that's not going to be as good when they have vendors who have, set up to provide food. There's usually a decent selection. It's not, you know, it's not the most selection. It's not like going in a big city and you have 50 restaurants you can pick from, but there are multiple vendors open most of the time, and most of the stuff is decent. It's not great necessarily. I mean, it varies quite a bit. You have obviously people there who are on paleo kicks, who are making stuff that's actually healthy and good for you and actually decent quality. On the other hand, you have people who they're just making burgers. They're just, like more run-of-the-mill stuff. Um, like the main vendor, I don't think he's there again, but they used to have a guy who kind of had almost not a monopoly, but he had a very preferential position because he was allowed to have the main pavilion, which actually had a full kitchen. And that guy must have made a killing. His name, he was Greek. What's his name? Something's baklava. I forget his name. But he's Greek, and we would make like during the year he sells baklava like online, but he would run this kitchen and like the food there was great. He made these fantastic like bacon weave omelets where they would weave bacon into a mat and then fill it, make an omelet out of it with keflatiri cheese and eggs and whatever else you wanted to add. And oh, that stuff was amazing. And it was expensive. It was like 16 bucks, but I had one of those every day pretty much. And he got tired of working so hard, so last year he wasn't there. And I mean, I kind of missed the bacon weave omelets, but there's still plenty of food. So if you don't bring any food or aren't able to cook, don't worry. There's going to be food available there, and you can run to town if you have to. I'm assuming if you drive there, and if you don't drive there, I'm sure there'll be people who will be willing to give you a ride for a price or for free. Um, and it's one of those things. Once you kind of get to know someone informally a little bit, they're much more willing to, agree to some charitable interactions. So food, I wouldn't worry too much about, unless you're really super picky. And if you're really super picky, then you might have to start thinking about what you're going to bring. I mean, there's a selection, but I don't know. Everyone has their level. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about food. I wouldn't worry too much about finding a spot. You can find a spot. Someone will be willing to share, especially if you can grease the wheels with a little money. So definitely worth going to even if you can only go for a couple days. Obviously aim for the weekend, but coming earlier in the week is not a loss. You're not missing out if you come Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You still get a basic feel for it. Um, and yeah, I hope I get to see some of you there. I always see some people that I know, and it's always cool. That's actually one of the best parts, especially when you've had people when you've known them for years online, but you've never actually met, and then you get to actually meet them. It's definitely a great experience. The intellectual discussions they can be pretty good, although it's mostly humor. There's a lot of drinking, there's a lot of drug use, Like there's a lot of revelry and like that's all fine too. There's the whole campfire atmosphere, which I definitely find appealing. Um, yeah, so yeah, like anyone who like to go, definitely think about it. Uh, for a couple years now, I keep telling myself like I don't really need to keep going because I like to do other things, but it is a great event, and I always feel like if I didn't go, I'd kind of I'm missing out because it's just that kind of thing. It's just it's really nice, and it is a beautiful, beautiful area. I tried to actually go to Mount Washington after I finished last year, and they were closed because they were running races on it that day. My loss, but you can see it. I mean, you can see the presidential range, and whatever you want to say about the naming. Um, it's a beautiful, probably among the most beautiful places in all of the eastern United States. So definitely, definitely worth coming. Just bring your tick medicine because you don't want to catch Lyme disease. But anyway, that's pretty much it, and I hope to see some of you all there. Talk to you later. Bye bye.